You're now in trouble with her. Why are you in trouble now? You're turning me into a bad guy. Suze, just say what you think. You knew what you were doing and got him by the balls. Joanie Lamb, co-founder of Daystar Television Network, is suddenly at the heart of a crisis that no one could have seen coming. This rocks the world of Christian television. The network was built with the help of Joni and her late husband Marcus Lamb. She has long been seen as a sign of faith, kindness, and unwavering devotion. Right now, though, shocking new information has come to light about Joni that has shocked Christians. Why did these claims change everything for Joni? What is the truth behind them? Come with us as we look into the details of this shocking scandal and the effects it has had on Daystar. Jimmy Evans spread rumors and ideas about Joni Lamb. There had been rumors about Joni Lamb's involvement with the family and Daystar Television Network for a while, but Jimmy Evans's engagement made them stronger in a way that no one saw coming. In the religious community, Evans had long been seen as a reliable source because he was a well-known Christian marriage psychologist and the founder of XO Marriage. His friendship with Joni and the Lamb family, on the other hand, became tense after a difficult meeting in July 2023. Sources close to the family say that this meeting was much more than just a family talk. It was a power fight that would have ongoing effects on everyone. As the story spread, many people began to wonder what was really going on behind closed doors. People began to come up with ideas about how powerful Joni Lamb really was and how far she would go to keep her family and Daystar under her control. Some people close to Joni said she was controlling her kids, especially Jonathan Lamb, to make sure that her opinion was always the most important one in the family. Others thought Jimmy Evans was using his power as an expert on marriage to help her get even stronger, maybe even taking over decisions at Daystar. A common idea was that Evans had been working with Joni to strengthen her position as head in the church, especially after Marcus Lamb's death. As Joni's sadness grew, Evans was seen as more than just a marriage counselor. He was also seen as a spiritual guide who helped her keep Daystar's direction under control. A few sources even said Evans, who was known for giving advice to other Christian leaders, might have seen a chance to work with Joni to benefit himself. Was he just giving her advice, or was he trying to change her mind, which would have affected Daystar's future? The way the meeting went made the idea that Evans might be helping Joni change the way the family works even more likely. Evans is said to have put a lot of pressure on Jonathan Lamb and his wife Susie during this meeting. Evans told Jonathan that he needed to obey his mother's authority because, in his words, Joni's voice was just as real as God's. For people who knew the family, the idea that Joni could speak for God and that her choices were predetermined by God set off danger bells. Could Joni have been making herself look like the clear spiritual leader of Daystar with Evans's help? There were some who thought Evans was taking advantage of Joni's weakness after Marcus's death to gain more control over the Lamb family's business. Some people thought that Joni's growing power was a way to protect Daystar's reputation after Marcus died. Some people in the family thought that Joni was more motivated to hold on to her power now that Marcus wasn't there to keep things in balance. Joni seemed to be fighting for her place at the top, either out of fear, ambition, or a desire to protect Daystar's future. There were rumors that she was trying to silence any disagreements in the family, especially Jonathan, who had been seen for a long time as Daystar's possible heir. Some people thought Joni was trying to strengthen her position and stop anyone from questioning her power by forcing Jonathan to give in. They all started with the idea that Joni had become a controlling figure in the family and the church with the help of Jimmy Evans. But why? Was this about keeping power for personal reasons? Or was it about keeping Daystar's future and the Lamb family's history safe? The more people thought about it, the more difficult it looked. As the rumors got stronger, the thought that Joni's impact was getting more and more dangerous grew. People started to wonder if she was really looking out for her family's best interests, or if she was just using her power to keep things going. People were talking about Joni's power battle, and it wasn't just about how much control she had over her family. They were also talking about how much control she had over the direction of the church. Was the goal of Daystar less about sharing faith and more about keeping the Lamb family as the top family on Christian TV? Because Jimmy Evans was involved, this web of rumors kept getting bigger. What did Joni's bond with Evans look like, and how much power did Evans really have in the family? Was he just giving Daystar advice, or was he part of a bigger plan to control her future? There were a lot of different and strong ideas about what part he played in the family's problem. Others saw Evans as a good-hearted but wrong-headed advisor, while others saw him as a puppet master. In any case, the growing conflict in the family seemed to be caused by the way Joni's power and Evans's impact came together. For many, the most important question was what was going on behind the scenes. Could the power battles and lies of the leaders of the Lamb family be causing it to fall apart? The family used to be strong, united by faith and love. Many Daystar fans and followers were curious about what the truth was about Joni Lamb, Jimmy Evans, and the future of the show. They also wanted to know if the Lamb family would ever be able to recover from the damage done by the scandals and lies. Having trouble? What's wrong with you? You're turning me into a bad guy. They're really scary. That's what happened. Do you think that submission means she's God's voice to you? I asked her. I'm sorry, can you clarify? She replied, she's the voice of God to me. She's God's voice. So I have to hear from her. What she says is God outside of Daystar. In Daystar, this is the voice of God. But what responsibility does she have if she's wrong? You also say you want to pray about it. A lot of people have prayed. A lot of talks have taken place. Now is the time to decide. Well, we just had this meeting today, so I think it's fair to be able to give. I think you need to tell me now. You either submit or you don't. You either submit or you don't. I'm not playing the game any longer. Not at all. What did Jimmy Evans really say? There were shocking claims that Jonathan Lamb, his wife Susie, Joni Lamb, and Jimmy Evans met in July 2023. This meeting became one of the most talked about events in the Lamb family history. To people outside the family, it looked like just another tense family talk. However, what happened in that meeting shocked everyone. Jimmy Evans, a well-known marriage psychologist and the founder of XO Marriage, said some very hurtful and dishonest things at this meeting that would change the Lamb family's relationship for good. That meeting caused a lot of noise. What did Jimmy Evans say that made everyone so angry? As it seemed, the meeting had begun in a harmless way. Jonathan and Susie Lamb were alarmed about the way things were going. Daystar was in charge after Marcus Lamb's sudden death, and they wanted to talk to Joni about these things. While they were hoping for an open conversation, they were instead met with an attempt to force them to give in, first to Joni and then to Daystar's leadership, which she controlled. Jimmy Evans, who was in the room, was there to help settle things, but soon his participation went from being a helpful guide to an upsetting display of power over spiritual matters. From what Jonathan and Susie said about the meeting, Evans started by agreeing with Joni and in a way that made it clear he was there to help her keep Daystar and the family under line. Evans told Jonathan strongly, "You need to give up. When Joni talks, you listen, because her voice is like God's in this house." What they said was both shocking and jarring. Jonathan looked shocked and asked for more information, trying to understand how important what was being said was. "You mean to say that when Joni talks, it's like God is talking through her?" he asked. Evans didn't think twice before answering yes. When Joni talks, God gives her the right to do so. You need to know that this isn't just about family or being a boss. It's about the power of God. The will of God will not be obeyed if you do not listen to her. It was hard to believe that the words came from someone who was meant to be giving advice, because they were said with such confidence. Jonathan was having a hard time understanding what he was hearing at that very moment. Evans made a living by helping partners talk things out and find common ground. How could he compare someone's words to God's? From there, the meeting quickly got worse. Evans's tone became more insistent, and Jonathan and Susie could feel the pressure to follow Joni's lead. Evans went on to say that Jonathan's stubbornness was upsetting everyone, and that the only way for the family and the church to move forward was for Jonathan to follow Joni's lead without question. Evans said, adding to the shock of the moment, "You are being stubborn, and stubbornness is the same as idolatry. You're following your own opinion like it's a god, instead of listening to God's will as it comes through Joni. This is a spiritual matter, Jonathan, not just a family matter." Jonathan was deeply upset by what was being said and tried to stand his ground. He said, "I can hear from God myself." What Evans said in answer was very scary. "Why do I need to hear from her to know what God is saying?" "You can hear from God, but you need to understand that what Joni says is God's will for this family and this ministry. If you can't accept that, you don't belong here." The threat was clear, even though it was hidden. Things were at stake. Give in to Joni or lose everything. Joni spoke up now. She had been quiet up until then. "God's will is clear," she said in a strong voice, "and you need to understand that this is about more than just you, Jonathan. It's about what's best for this family and Daystar. You've made this about your own opinions, and that's where you're wrong. The only thing that matters is that you submit to my leadership." Jonathan felt the situation's weight on his shoulders. The woman he used to look up to and look to for advice was now the one forcefully demanding that he obey a leader that seemed strange and unfair. Evan saw that things were getting tense and pushed harder, telling Jonathan that he needed to be humble. "If God came to you right now and said you were wrong, would you correct it?" Evans asked me. Jonathan paused as he tried to understand what the question really meant. "Of course," he replied. Evans didn't stop there, though. "Well, God hasn't appeared in front of you with a booming voice, Jonathan," Evans said to me, "but he has spoken through Joni, and you need to recognize that." Jonathan was shocked. That someone could say they were speaking for God was something he had never seen this clearly before. It was no longer about family problems or Daystar's future at this point in the meeting. It had turned into a battle for power, with Evans and Joni claiming more control than Jonathan would accept. Evans kept putting pressure on Jonathan, telling him that if he didn't follow Joni's orders, he would cause the family to fight and anger God. Evans told her, "You're taking your family down a dangerous path. You're opening yourself to spiritual and emotional destruction if you don't align yourself with Joni's authority. This is God's will, Jonathan." The words were like a dark cloud in the air, and Jonathan knew he had to make a choice. It was a big deal for his family, his work, and his own sense of who he was. At that moment, something changed that couldn't be changed back. It wasn't just family fights anymore. It had turned into a spiritual war for power, and Joni, with Evans's support, was making herself the only one in charge. When Jonathan and Susie left the meeting, they didn't trust either Joni or Evans anymore. Evans's words, the pressure to give in, and the comparisons to worship made them feel like they were being controlled, like their faith was being used against them to control what they did. The Lamb family used to be united in their faith and purpose, but this shocking event had split them up. Many things would change because of the meeting for months to come. People would soon start to hear bits and pieces of the story, but they would still not know all the details. Rumors about Joni Lamb, Jimmy Evans, and the Lamb family's problems started to spread. For Jonathan, it wasn't clear what to do next. He had lost his place in the family, and his mother and he could no longer talk to each other. Evans's words and Joni's part in the scheme made him question everything he thought he knew about faith, family, and leadership. The stories kept going around, and the Lamb family found themselves in a public fight that put their mission and relationships at risk. Jimmy Evans' shocking claims would not be forgotten for a long time, and the Lamb family would have doubts about Joni's guidance and power for many years to come. At your mother's request, we called you back in here. Dawn could talk to you, and we give you 24 hours from the time we sign this. That's roughly 2:30 to 3 o'clock tomorrow. If you can sign that, come back into Arnold's office. Reactions from the family, Joanie Lamb's answer, and what comes next. The tense meeting between Joni Lamb, Jonathan Lamb, Susie Lamb, and Jimmy Evans left the Lamb family shaken, but it also started a new part of their lives. There was a big split in the family because of the claims of spiritual control and manipulation. There was also doubt about the future of Daystar Television Network. For the Lambs, the meeting had huge effects on their lives, both in public and in private. People used to think of Joni Lamb as the tough, classy, and helpful head of the family. Now, both her children and the public were paying close attention to her. For years, she had been praised for how she led Daystar and how strong her faith was. But now, the people closest to her were questioning what she was doing. As word got out about the meeting, so did stories about how she behaved. As a wife and a mother, Joni had always come across as picture perfect. Now, though, after what she did, people started to wonder if her public image had really been just a show. For Jonathan Lamb, it was a very personal matter. He had worked all his life with his family to build the church that they had all put their hearts into. What Evans and Joni said in that meeting broke everything Jonathan thought he knew about being a leader, his faith, and his family. He felt forced to obey his mother in a way that didn't make sense, and as a result, he began to doubt everything he had believed before. He was angry and hurt about his connection with his mother, which had always been a source of strength for him. He felt alone and useless because he had been spiritually abused and was stuck in a family situation that was no longer good. Joni, on the other hand, had a problem that she didn't see coming. As the public face of Daystar, she had won the hearts of millions of people for years. She had been the rock of her family for years. She had to fight to keep control of both her family and the network now that Jonathan didn't want to follow her lead. After a fight at the meeting with Jonathan and Susie, Joni shut herself off because she didn't know how to deal with her feelings. She had always thought of herself as the family's head and the one who kept everything together. On the other hand, the people she had worked so hard to protect were grilling her. Johnny's reaction to what was going on was one of rebellion and denial. She wouldn't take any criticism of her rule, calling Jonathan's worries rebellious and pointless. After the meeting, Johnny continued to defend her actions in public, saying that she had divine right to be in charge. For her, being a woman of faith meant being chosen to lead not only her family, but also the mission that had become an important part of Christian TV. In interviews and public comments, Joni played down the family fight by saying it was just a mistake or a short-term disagreement. She didn't say anything in public about how Jonathan and Susie felt hurt emotionally during the meeting, and she didn't seem ready to think that what she did might have caused damage that couldn't be fixed. At the same time, Jonathan and Susie were left to fix their broken family relationship. The meeting took a toll on their emotions, and the attention from the public made things worse. They felt deceived when Joni wouldn't admit the pain they were going through. Not only was this a fight in the family for Jonathan, but it was also a big change in how he saw his role in the family and in the church. As Marcus had done, he had always thought that one day he would take over Daystar. He wasn't sure if he still wanted to be a part of the network, though. Susie also had a hard time with the fallout. She had always been there for Jonathan and his family, but now that they had been emotionally and spiritually abused, she was starting to doubt her own place in the church. It wasn't outside forces that made her lose faith. It was the people who said they were her spiritual guides. Susie felt hurt on a personal level, and it was hard for her to get over the fact that people she thought were family had broken her trust. The public's response to the family's problems was quick and strong. Daystar was once a shining example of Christian TV, but now it was in the middle of a storm of debate. People were beginning to doubt the network's honesty, and Joanie Lamb's reputation as a trustworthy boss began to weaken. Fans who had long respected Joni for her part in Daystar's success were now split. Some people thought Joni was just doing what she had to do to protect Daystar's future, while others thought she was controlling and manipulative. Joni found it hard to ignore the backlash from the people. The picture she had carefully painted of herself as a loving, loyal wife and mother was being called into question. She had worked hard for years to become known as a strong Christian leader, but now the people she trusted the most were tearing down that image. Even though the opposition was growing, Joni wouldn't give up. It didn't change her mind that she had done nothing wrong and that her power was needed to keep the family and the church together. The family's problems kept getting worse. It was clear that Daystar's future was not certain. Since Jonathan and Susie were pulling away from the network and the Lamb family was split up, it was unclear who would lead the church from now on. If the family was having problems, would Joni stay in charge, or would Daystar's leadership have to be changed? The Lamb family had to face the hard truth of their situation in the days and weeks after the meeting. But Jonathan and Susie couldn't seem to fix their relationship with Joni. It looked like the damage was too great. People couldn't get over the mental scars that were caused by the spiritual abuse and family lies right away. And for Joni, the weight of being in charge of Daystar and trying to bring her broken family back together became too much to bear. It's still not clear what will happen next for Joni Lamb and her family. Will Joni be able to fix her relationship with her kids and the rest of her family? Or will the split get bigger and send the once close family even farther apart? And what will Daystar do now that these things are known? We won't know how this family story ends until it happens. One thing is for sure, though. The Lamb family's public image, which was once clean, will never be the same again. These events will also likely have long-lasting effects on their work and personal lives.